Well, we put in some serious time here on the bench this weekend, and we have the Xray F1 car like 90% there. So we went through the build. I'll talk to you guys about some things that I've done, some things I ran into, and just kind of help you guys all out. So I'm Chad, this is the Dorky and 40 RC channel. Let's talk about some F1 RC today. First, wanted to say thanks to everybody for coming back and watching. The last F1 video performed really well, like old drag car kind of days. So if you like this stuff, don't forget to thumbs up, subscribe, all that kind of stuff, so we can keep that momentum going. So we'll take you guys into the build here. So as you can see, we're like 90% there. Everything is built, mounted. I've got some setup stuff done. I also have the body cut out and just painted, and I've got some 3D prints for the helmet and the halo and all that kind of stuff. So that is pretty cool. This is the Montech 2023 F1 body shell, and that just pops right on there in a certain fashion. There we go. And thanks to my boys Dutch and Phelan, the other gentleman, I can never remember his name, younger guy, help me out with some pictures of how to cut out the body. So it went, I think, okay. There's a couple spots that I obviously overcorrected here in the front nose, but you got to have clearance, of course, for all of your arms and everything else. But everything looks pretty good when it comes to the body. It'll be good enough to get me on the track and get me going. Next weekend, hopefully, we can drop it down for a few laps. There'll be a race up there. It's not going to be ready to race. I don't want to tear it up, obviously, my first day out. So we'll probably just be racing GT12. So the first thing that I did not do, and some of the Xray drivers up there, and I'm sure down here, will be shaking their heads in shame, is I did not glue any of the outside of the parts. I've wrecked FPV quads made out of way shittier carbon than this at 70, 80, who knows how fast, in the trees, poles, and everything else. And I've never had any of them like delaminate. Even the cheapest stuff, they might delaminate a little bit, but nothing like, you know, they say you should do with this. So if I had to do over it again, I probably would go ahead and do it, but I did not do it this time. So we can just go on through the instructions here and things that I found maybe a little bit of challenging or a little bit difficult. Pretty much followed the standard setup in the manual. The guys had me do a couple things that we will talk about. The first thing would be to raise the roll center a little bit, and we did that on the front with these front posts here, adding these shims, and we also did it on the pod and the pivot ball in the back. So we got the front roll center all raised up. Now these caster inserts and the bolts that go in them, the whole thing, the way that this is built up here in the front, it's kind of clunky, like compared especially to things that I know are on my GT12 that I really like. For example, all of these spacers, you can just see there is spacer after spacer after spacer, 4 layers of them, and then of course your spring on the bottom, because that's literally, you know, your kingpin, your shock, whatever you want to think about it. A lot of spacers, and on each side of that kingpin is an E-clip, which really sucks. The GT12 doesn't use E-clips. It's got built-in caster blocks that are, you know, 1 degree, 1.5 degree. They kind of like pop into the arm here on the bottom. I don't know how they would really do that with this, but maybe they could someday, which would be great. And then at least on the top of the GT12 here, inside of that kingpin, you just put a screw in there, and then you can start pulling off all your spacers. Here you got an E-clip, and you get 1 extra E-clip. So you definitely want to order some extra E-clips. So I've got those on order, and some half millimeter spacers, because the 1 millimeter spacers evidently are out of stock everywhere, or at least at a couple places that I have looked. one thing is the measurement of the screws. You know, I may see 6 millimeters or 8 millimeters. I mean, my calipers are never really wrong. These screw lengths seem to be a little inconsistent. Like a 6 millimeter might be about, I don't know, 5.2 to 5.3, and they're kind of all over the place. So I had extra screws. A lot of these are the same that are being used in my GT12 Xray. So that is, you know, they're all here in these containers right here. So those seem to measure out like this one did. So I don't really know what is up with that, but I used them where I could, and I didn't use them where I thought that maybe it would be an issue. Comes to bracing, it seems like we're not running any bracing up there in the front, even though we are running it all down along the lines. Camber, I haven't adjusted camber yet, and basically you do that by putting a screwdriver into these holes right here, turning that, and it basically will move this in or out, this piece right here. It's kind of a two-piece design that this outer link kind of goes in and out of this link. So you can get a driver in there. It's a little fussy. It's not the best, but it is what it is. One of the other things, talking about how you actually set these kingpins, the great thing again about the X1223 is, since you got that kingpin that is literally stuck in there and you just start stacking things on top of it, the arm automatically like sets, you know, it just goes up and down the kingpin. So you got a hard stop, or then you're out, or you have a hard stop with the screw that is on top of the kingpin. With these, basically what you have to do is you have to take up the slack and then tighten the other end of the axle in. So basically that's how you set your position so this thing doesn't like wander around all over the place. Again, a little clunky, kind of odd that some of these changes didn't make it into the 24 kit, but from what I understand, Xray really focused heavily on their touring car this year, and maybe let a lot of that stuff go to the wayside. So rear pod, got the fan mounted in the back here. You can see that the clearances are really close back there. So, you know, we've got the gear diff, we've got the motor, and then of course we've got the fan mounted right back there on the back with the Montech wing. Here's what I was talking about, where we added in some shims to raise the roll center of both ends of the pivots. So that way that'll help us, it'll give us a little bit more traction and a little bit more steering. Car will rotate a little bit more on and off power, and we went up higher in the back than we did in the front. And then what we can do is, if it's too aggressive, we can start taking away stuff in the front, which is a good way to kind of like handle these you know, pan cars with the pods and everything. This is kind of the main piece right here of the Xray that kind of functions as a few different things. It retains your side springs. It also retains your all of the battery mounting system, the backstop, and the side toppers. And it kind of gets buried. And I noticed that there's just a lot of little things on this car that kind of get buried. So you can see that that piece is totally buried underneath there. And then your side damping tubes connect on the bottom. So when you want to do fluid changes on those, they are buried. When installing the servo, if you know, you get your side braces on here, or you've already mounted your arm, in order to tighten up those screws, you kind of have to like take things on and off. So there's a few little things. Mounting the electronics, you know, I really wanted to use my R1 ESC. This is stock spec Hobbywing 80 amp in there, which will be plenty enough for this car, even on 2S. But this thing is literally like almost half the size of the R1. The R1, I had it literally like lodged and crammed inside here, and it was butting up against all this stuff and kind of having problems with the servo clearance when the servo would come over all the way. So I ended up electing going with the Hobbywing, and it's just going to make everything a little bit cleaner. Of course, we got the R1 25.5 back there, which is pretty cool. The gear diff, man, the gear diff and stuff, the way that it builds up is amazing. And Xray bearings are super nice. I mean, you can just see how that axle is just spinning and spinning and spinning with very little movement. So they really do make some super nice bearings. Exploded parts view of all of the gear diff stuff, and really these things went together great. No flash or anything on any of the parts. The diff is just super smooth. It got the 92 tooth on there, which is, I guess, what everybody runs, and we'll figure out the gearing later. Haven't done really anything as far as like ride height or anything else. They said once we put the tires on, we should be good with ride height and all that stuff, at least to get going. I built the center shock here to factory spec, which is 100% rebound. So we will see how that goes. We've got the Sanwa, the big Sanwa servo up there. That thing is definitely pricey. Hopefully it lasts and works. I do like this one just because it has all of the programmable functionality, and running the telemetry channel, I can actually use the M17 to change the different programming and power features on the fly using R mode that is built into this. So I can literally program up to 5 different sets of servo speeds, braking, and all those different things, and just click through them while I am actually racing. So that's some pretty cool technology that's built into that stuff. Never got to use a whole lot of that back in the drag racing days, but now we get to in the on-road carpet days. The build, yeah, pretty good. Body done. Need to do a few more little touch-up things to that. Do as much setup here on the bench as I can. I did get to work also on the tires, and they turned out okay. I had, glue tires, always is a pain in the butt. And with these, you have to glue them as well. So for the rear tire, what they do is we put like a glue bead on the outside, basically for protection. So when you bump up against a wall or something like that, it doesn't mess up your tire. So I probably could put these on the truer and clean that up a little bit, but it'll get jacked up enough. Now with the front ones, you do the same thing. You do a bead of glue around the top, but then we also did a ring on the top on the outside of the sidewall to basically prevent, traction rolling and all that kind of fun stuff. And of course I went to the Hobbywing and kind of like did like a base setting of like the tune and everything. It's a blanky class. There's no turbo or anything, so there's not really a whole bunch to do. Just put a little drag brake in there, so on and so forth. So literally besides putting the tires and stuff back on and just kind of getting some basic measurements, this baby is literally almost track ready. So I'm painting my helmet right now, painting the halo, going to be mounting those on the body, throw a couple stickers on there, and maybe the next time you guys see this, it should be on the track. I am hoping. So that's all I got for you today on the F1. I'm going to rest the voice because I've been sick and can't get rid of this. And that's it. So peace, guys. Love y'all. Later.